Aloha and welcome back to Wanderous. I'm your host, Andrew Crusoe, and today we're going to wrap up Nepal. Today we're going to go to a place called Hiranya Varna Mahavihar, which means the Great Gold-Colored Monastery. And we're also going to talk about some challenging things and freezing temperatures of Kathmandu in early January. Also, apparently an accidental breaking of the rules in a temple and some awesome singing bowls in a demonstration that I wasn't quite expecting. This one's really fun. I'm really excited to wrap up Nepal and get to India in the next episode. So let's wrap it up. Come along with me. So when we last left off, I had just taken the 8-hour bus ride from Pokhara in the west side of Nepal back to Kathmandu. And Pokhara had felt like a second home to me. I was very surprised how much it felt like home. Something about the energy there. I don't know what it was. And returning to Kathmandu comparatively, Kathmandu is a lot more noisy and chaotic, although there's a lot of great stuff in Kathmandu. As I often do around the world, I found a couch surfing host. I was only going to be back in Kathmandu for, I think it was like 2 or 3 nights before I flew out of Nepal, before my visa would end. I was cutting it a little bit close, actually. I think my visa would end 2 days after my flight, which I don't always recommend because if you have a flight delay, you can risk overstaying your visa, which you don't want to do anywhere. You can be fined or questioned, or it's not good. In a worst case, you can get a warning stamped on your passport. And I've never overstayed a visa, and I don't think I ever will. But I was lucky to stay with a nice guy who had a pretty large house. But just like in Pokhara, the house had no heating. So at that night, the first night, it got down to almost freezing. It was a few degrees above freezing. And I have a theory that my last night in Kathmandu, I did get below freezing, and that's going to connect with a computer problem that I would have when I got to India. I think that was connected, but we'll come back to that. It's all an interconnected story, right? But I really wanted to revisit Patan Darbar Square. If you go back maybe 5 or 6 episodes, I did talk about Patan. It is a very old part of Kathmandu, and there are some lovely temples there. There are temples I don't know the name of, and there are temples that I definitely know the name of, including the temple I mentioned in the intro, the Golden Temple. But before I got to that, I just sort of wandered around, and at this time they were still rebuilding. They were in the middle of restructuring a lot of things. They'd had a large earthquake, and you can look this up, in 2015. And there were still some things they were working on and restoring, including the road. I have some pretty wild photos of the road just being totally torn up in several areas. And I think will be pretty funny. Whenever I return to Nepal, I intend on taking like a before and after. I'll take some after shots and try to stand in the same places. I'll keep these specific photos favorited on my phone, and I'll try to stand in the same spot. And then maybe I can do some cool before and after, because the roads were just real beat up, just like pothole covers and then just dirt and bricks, piles of bricks. But you could still go in the temples. In fact, I wandered into one temple, I remember this narrow stairwell going up, and I get to the second floor, and I get up there, and there's a bell, right? There's a bell, and there are these incredible carvings, hand carved. I think it's a Garuda, which is a bird spirit, and these huge stone elephants, guarding the entrance on the outside. And I remember getting up into this temple. It was just the whole exterior, and the people who support this show will get these photos of this gorgeous the gorgeous places I went into, including this temple that did not have a name in front of it. And I get up there, and they're like, you're not allowed in here. I was surrounded by other Nepalis, and they said, you need to go. This woman was not happy. And apparently only Hindus were allowed in that temple. So be careful what temple you go into, I guess. Unfortunately, it can be a sensitive thing. And the funny thing was, like, there was no guard, like there was no, it was very relaxed, I felt, but I just, the wrong person saw me at the wrong time. I was very respectful when I left, but something to keep in mind, that can happen. The majority of the temples that you'll come across in Nepal are not restrictive. I think it's only very specific, special temples. Very, very small. I mean, it was, the door was open, people were going in and out, and they just didn't like a Caucasian guy going in there. So make that what you will. But one of the temples that I went into is the Golden Temple, which was just so striking. Now, this Golden Temple, the Hiranya Varna Mahavihar, which is the gold-colored great monastery, is actually part of a monastery. Vihar or Vihara is a monastery, and it was quite damaged by the 2015 earthquake. And apparently, according to legend, it was built at a spot where a rat was chasing a cat, and they would feed rats there into the 90s. I don't think they're doing it anymore, but they would feed rats, which I don't know if that's a good idea, but they would do that. And this was like nestled, it's in Google Maps, which is why I noticed it, because I was looking around at interesting locations in Patan, and I was staying not very far away, thankfully. I was just walking around. I mean, Patan is quite walkable. Of course, you have to be careful of the motorbikes, as you ought to be in almost any Asian country. You get to this narrow opening, and they're like, well, okay, the entrance is this. They wanted to, they were like, it's 100 Nepali rupees, which is like $1. And I was like, I'm sorry, I only have like 75. And they're like, fine. Actually, I think I only had 50. I had no cash for some reason. And they were just like, come in. It doesn't matter. It was a slow day. And the first thing you see when you enter is, if you look up, and I like to look up if I'm in an interesting vaulted ceiling, you see the Kala Chakra mandala. Mandala, of course, is a circular meditation symbol. That's how I would describe it. Kala is time, chakra is wheel, and it is this really striking, hand-carved, incredibly intricate stone carving on the ceiling of the entrance. And I have a couple lovely photos of that as well for supporters. Of course, if you don't know, each one of these episodes comes with usually dozens of background photography and often video. And it's a really good way to support the show by joining my Patreon. And for just $10 a month, you get access to everything, and you can cancel anytime. You also get access to all the stuff on the $5 level. There's also a $5 tier where you get access to a bunch of audiobooks that I've done. And it's worth checking out. We have a very lovely little community over there, and there's commenting, and if you ask me questions, I focus on that community quite a bit, and I respond to questions over there about how you can do what I'm doing. And I'm really, really grateful for the people who support the show, because this show takes a fair amount of time and energy to produce and edit, master, and get out there and promote. So thank you. You know who you are. Your support means a lot. And the photos for this is a really amazing photo shoot. I mean, when you enter into the temple, it's quite a intricate layout. And you can go up the stairs to kind of an overlook area where you can see the entrance to the main shrine. And it's all gilded, it's all gold plated. It's wild. And there are definitely a lot of lion guardians. And of course there is a Vajra, which is the weapon / defense Buddhist symbol. It's like this two-sided lotus thing, which I've talked about a few episodes ago. Of course, there's a Vajra in the center sort of protecting it. And it is a place that feels completely timeless. It was completed in 1409. So it's been around a while. And of course, when you're there, you will run into people who speak some English that are excited to talk to you about, oh, where are you from? And that's always fun. And I'm asking, like, so is this Maitreya? Is this the Buddha? Maitreya is the name of the Buddha that will be born in the future, the next one, because there have been many Buddhas apparently. And they're like, no, this is just the normal Buddha. And then they said, well, you can look up here. And they led me through, and I have a video of this that I'll put in the show notes. All the stuff in the show notes is free. I usually link to YouTube Shorts or TikTok Shorts. Sometimes the TikTok one is longer, because when I was producing these, the limit for a YouTube Short was 1 minute. Now the limit is longer. So sometimes I link to my TikTok. Of course, I'm @ Hello Crusoe, just like on Patreon, HELLOCRUSOE. And in the show notes, which can be found wherever you're listening to this, the show notes will have a video of me being guided or kind of guided around through the back of this place and seeing another large Vajra, and they point out another entrance. And they ended up leading me into, and this happens, into this shop behind the temple where they basically pitched like really pitched me these singing bowls. They really wanted me to buy a singing bowl, and they were amazing. Actually, they were handmade. Many of them were handmade, hammered, just intricately designed, brass or mixed. Some of them had 7 metals as an alloy. Very old recipe they would use to make these bowls. Recipe of metals. And masks, wooden carved masks. And they showed me, and I have a video of this as well that I'll put in the show notes. They showed me and allowed me to take slow motion video of the water in the bowls just reverberating. It was really, really cool. I had a lot of fun. I had a nice conversation with them, and they were excited to meet me. But I had to explain to them that I was really sorry, but I already have too much weight in my bag. I just had too much. It wasn't the time. I would eventually buy a singing bowl, but not in Kathmandu. I would buy a singing bowl in India a couple years later, actually. But we had a nice time. We had a lovely conversation. I was there for like 20 minutes. Nobody else was around, you know. Sometimes I feel guilty, and if you're a Westerner going to these countries, it's very understandable, I think, to feel a bit guilty when you're like, I can't buy anything, and they just keep pitching you. You know what I mean? But I've decided not to feel guilty if I've already, and this is a conversation about boundaries, if I've already said, hey, I can't buy this today, and they just keep talking to me, I'm not going to feel like I'm wasting their time, which I have felt in certain situations in the past. I've had to figure out that, you know, if I speak my boundary, I can't do this, and they want to keep talking, that's their choice, obviously. And also, if nobody else is around, it's not like I'm wasting their time. It's not like I'm taking time away from somebody else that'd be buying. You know, I feel a lot better when I'm the only person there, and then we're just 2 people chilling, right? And that's what happened. And that happened a couple times in Nepal. And it was a very cool and I felt refreshing cultural exchange. They asked me where I was from. We talked about Hawaii a bit. And it was fun. I mean, many people in Nepal cannot afford to leave Nepal. So there is a certain amount of, and they'd probably like this podcast, to be honest. There's a certain amount of, at least it seemed to me, a bit of like people vicariously living through your experience, hearing about your experience. And that is to be expected, especially if you decide to live the way that I've been living for over 3 years as of this recording. And as I said in the last episode, I am thinking about doing a live Q&A either on Patreon's app or on YouTube Live. So if you're interested in that, please leave a comment, drop a comment. I really appreciate comments to this show. And it's good to know these aren't just going into the void. I mean, I see people listening to it. I do get analytics, but I really appreciate interaction too. That whole area, the whole shop at the singing bowls was quite amazing, actually. And her English was pretty good. And many of them were made in nearby Tibet. You know, Tibet is bordering to the northeast, is bordering Nepal. And occasionally has an open road, although it's very complicated with governmental permission, I mean, it's a crazy high mountain range, but sometimes people approach Everest from the Tibet side, although it's a bit more complicated. And those are your two options. In fact, when I get back to Nepal, it would be pretty cool to go to the east side and maybe see Everest from a distance. I don't know if I want to. I mean, even getting to like the first base camp in Everest is incredibly expensive and somewhat dangerous. But we'll see. We'll see. So I would say that I recommend. I don't have an incredible amount of things to say about the Golden Temple, Hiranya Varna, but I would recommend that you check it out. It's very cheap, less than the cost of a cup of coffee, and it has a very nice energy to it. And a lot of times there's someone wandering around who's happy to just answer a question or two and maybe even take a picture of you in front of places. And I wandered out, and there's just, there's shops everywhere. And I wandered into another place where they really tried to get me to buy a painting of one of basically the Dharmadhatu mandala, where there's all of these very lovingly done. A couple of them look like prints, though I wasn't sure they were actually paintings. But they really wanted to sell me one of these, and I was like, I'm really concerned that this is not going to survive, because the painting was rather wide, and I didn't want to roll it up because I knew it would get crushed. I needed something that was like an A4 sized piece of paper or smaller. This was a bit bigger. They did explain to me, I asked them about the 6 realms. There's 6 realms in certain parts of Buddhism, of different realms of consciousness. And they explained that. And there's a really cool YouTube short in the show notes to this show that I'll put of him explaining it. And it's quite fascinating. It's a good place to sort of get some of the basics about certain parts of Buddhism, although the real basics of Buddhism is that there is suffering, there's a way out of suffering, and releasing your attachment to outcomes and to things is how you get out of suffering as much as you can. So I wandered back down the street and back over to the main Darbar Square, the Patan Darbar Square, and the sun was getting low, and it was just it was really a scene. It was really a rustic scene, this road being torn up. And in parts it was pretty rough. I think it's a lot better now. There were parts where the middle was just a big puddle. People have to walk around it. I don't know how people were driving through this. It was really rough. They were in the middle of just tearing this whole place apart. But one of my favorite little moments was I saw these 2 guys leaning out of there's a museum across the way, and there were 2 guys leaning out of the window. And if you get to see this photo, I'd love to hear what you think of this. It's just a funny little moment. And they're leaning out, and one guy is taking a photo of the other. He's doing this, like, looking at the sunset kind of vibe of well, it wasn't quite sunset, but looking at the afternoon sun. And the other guy's leaning out, and it's very, like, looking cool. 2 guys leaning out of a window of a temple museum, looking cool. And I zoomed in all the way, 4 times zoom on my Olympus camera. And I've got there, and I fixed the brightness and everything. I post-processed the raw image. And it's just funny how seriously they're taking this moment, which I don't know how great the photo could have turned out, but the moment makes me chuckle. I guess you have to see their expression to realize it's kind of funny. But I recommend this whole area. If you go to Kathmandu, if you go to the capital of Nepal, you really need to check out Patan, Patan Square. And just walking around this whole area, there are tons of little shops. There's like tea shops, noodles, obviously tons of souvenirs, and so many temples. It's just really walkable. And of course, you can check out the Golden Temple when you're there. And so much. I haven't really highlighted just how much hand-carved everything there is. The exterior of these temples is so striking. There's one that's squares upon squares. It's like a fractal. And you can kind of go inside, but people just sit. It's also kind of a hangout. It's kind of a hangout. People have a guitar sometimes. There's a guitar in this one photo. And they sit and they talk, and it's just a relaxed place. Meanwhile, they're sitting, in the in this ledge of a temple that might be 700, 800,000 years old. That night, I wandered through some alleys going back to my host's place. And Also, there was some pretty good art there as well, and occasionally weird graffiti. It was either terrible or excellent. Like, people had drawn like elephant faces and all these faces of these animals. I love this shot. And the next day I woke up, supporters will see my very humble sleeping arrangement and the Davek umbrella that I did box opening of on YouTube, which I still have on my bed. Lovely little compact little umbrella made in New York. And that was the night that I flew out. That was the night that I think it got below freezing. And I think it damaged my laptop, which I'll talk about in the next episode, because it doesn't really, that saga does not begin until the next episode. The laptop saga, which was funny how that ended up working out and was full of lessons for me. I learned a lot from that saga. Learned a lot from India. And I was very struck by the beauty of Kathmandu that morning. All these orange flowers were blooming, and I took I think it was an InDrive. I used the app InDrive, which is pretty good in Nepal and India. Doesn't work in Vietnam. Can work on Bali. But in Nepal, people use InDrive and Patao, but InDrive is working in multiple countries. Patao only works in Nepal and Bangladesh, I think. And I got everything packed up, and I got in my flight and took it was like an hour 10 to cross over and land in Kolkata, the biggest city in the state of West Bengal, India. West Bengal, funny name for a state considering it's one of the most eastern spots. Well, not really. There are places far east of West Bengal, but it's still in the eastern half of India. But it's West Bengal because Bengal is that whole area. The Bengali people is that area and Bangladesh. Bangladesh. I don't know if I'll ever go there. People don't really talk about Bangladesh very much, and maybe that's because Dhaka. It's not easy to breathe, according to my research. Not so easy to breathe often in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. So I wasn't exactly attracted to going there. Though when I was in Kolkata, I met a couple people who had been there or were going there for a visa run. But this was January, and there were good things and bad things about North India in January. The good thing was it's not really hot. I mean, maybe it gets up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe like 27 Celsius. It wasn't too bad. Often it would be cooler than that. But the tough thing about India in the winter, at least if you're in a city, is that the air quality will be quite poor. This is a time when many farmers are clearing their crops, and many farmers cleared their crops by burning them. And often in northern India, depending where you are, but most places in northern India, they don't really have a lot of wind in the winter. There can be inversion layers, and often the pollution will just get stuck. It'll get stuck in the city, and it'll hang around, and it will cause you breathing complications, which happened to me. One of the most harrowing nights of my life is coming up in probably 2 or 3 episodes around respiration. And that's fun. Lessons to be learned there as well. Always have antihistamine on you. But I don't have anything incredibly profound to say about leaving Kathmandu. I was very touched by the country as a whole, and I intend to go back. Their visa is a bit pricey, probably because they rely so much on tourism. They know they can charge a bit more, and so much of their economy is really connected to tourism. So much of it is related to trekking and experiencing the great outdoors, experiencing the roof of the world, these incredible mountains. As I said in past episodes, eight of the top 10 tallest points on Earth, 8 of them are in the lovely kingdom of Nepal. Is it still a kingdom? It was for a while. I think it's some kind of parliamentary democracy now, in theory. And when you go, I expect the roads around Patan will be much better because they were in the middle of rebuilding them when I was there, and it's been several years since that. You're going to get a kick out of Nepal. I mean, there are vehicles that I would never even believe could hold people. Little truck things. It didn't make sense. Things were almost like tuk-tuks, but smaller, like auto rickshaws, right? Rickshaws with engines. And I'm just bewildered sometimes looking at these photos now and realizing I did take something like that once or twice. And it's so cheap. Of course, it's so cheap, but it's a bit risky. I think it's a bit risky. Luckily, people don't really drive that fast, you know. There's often too much traffic for people to drive fast. And frankly, it was all preparation for living in Indonesia, which I would do later. So once again, I'm really excited to share my adventures in India coming up. I haven't really delved into any of the videos since I've been there. I didn't get to editing all that video. I edited all the stuff from Nepal, but I didn't really do a bunch of shorts with India. So this will be my first time revisiting my first season of India. I would be there for a while, and it'll be quite challenging, to be honest, but also very rewarding. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. And it's full of some beautiful moments, some surprises, of course, and a lot of personal growth. And I just want to thank you for sharing your time with me and listening to this show. You know, this is very much a labor of love. I'm doing this, this show, frankly, it hasn't grown as rapidly as I would like, but I know that it's something, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I know that it's something that I'll be happy that I will have created. It's something, frankly, that is an archive for myself to remember these experiences as well. So it is partly for me just making this show, to be honest. And it's also to share what I've learned with the world, to share little tips and places where I've gone that might be overlooked. It's kind of like an omnibus of what it was like in the early 21st century, in a way. And I feel so lucky that I've been able to have the experiences that I've had. Anyway, once again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a question or a comment on my YouTube video. Every one of these episodes is also on YouTube or on Spotify. I see and reply to every single comment. I really, really appreciate every single comment. Just one sentence really touches me. And of course, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify really, 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 really helps to keep this show going. So as we would say in Hawaii, mahalo, mahalo. Thank you so much. Mahalo nui loa. I'll see you next time. And aloha.